Terrance Afer-Anderson. I'm wearing my bandit collar today and my fancy shirt because I have an extraordinarily special guest, a very beautiful actress, director, playwright, filmmaker by the name of Crystal Sessoms. How you doing?
I am doing wonderful, Terrance.
I'm so delighted to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, and congratulations on so much success with the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But you're a very successful young woman yourself.
I'm getting there.
Yeah,
I'm working really hard. I'm getting there.
I mean, you have you work in multiple disciplines in terms of the entertainment. But let's talk about your early childhood. Where were you born?
I was born in Newport News in Whitaker Memorial Hospital, which was the first
Whitaker.
black hospital. Yes, in Newport News.
Okay.
But I'm actually from Hampton. My parents are from North Carolina, and they moved to Newport News first. But by the time I was born, they had moved to Hampton.
Okay, so they had already moved to Hampton. You were just born at Whitaker Memorial.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My mother worked there for many years.
Okay, and you were educated in the Hampton public school system, but you went to private school too, didn't you?
I went to private schools up until the 8th grade, and then I transitioned into public schools.
How was that transition? I know for me, I went through a parochial school, a private school, up until the 8th grade, and there was a big transition.
For me, it was really good.
Okay.
Private schools were difficult. I didn't really fit in the private schools.
Really?
Really. So it was like a release.
It was a celebration.
Yes, it was.
You left Christian school and
Yes.
got the Holy Spirit in public school, right?
Most definitely.
Okay. You know, actually, for me, it was a bigger transition going from school in Norfolk, Virginia, to high school in Portsmouth. That was the more unnerving transition for me.
I bet.
So you say that you were going to public school was a bit of a release for you. What kind of student were you in private school? And then we'll talk about public school.
I was a really quiet student. Like I said, I didn't fit in, so I really went in.
When you say you didn't fit in, what does that mean?
I didn't get along with the students.
Okay.
You know, I did my work. I've always been focused on academics. I was raised in a household where, you know, that wasn't, you know, you were going to do your work, you were going to study.
Right.
But I just, you know, I really didn't fit in with the students. I was, you know, oftentimes the only black person in the class.
Well,
and I just
probably contributed a great deal.
I didn't adapt to that very well.
And you withdrew.
And I withdrew, yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Now, when you withdrew, when you went inside, was there any exploration going on?
Most definitely.
I'm sure there was.
I think that is the beginning of writing for me.
Did you start writing in elementary school?
I always had journals.
Okay.
My mother would give me journals for birthdays, Christmas. I would always get a journal. And so I began to write, you know, my thoughts down. I didn't know then it would turn into something more, but looking back, I would definitely say that was the beginning.
How much value was that journaling? You've alluded to the impact that had in your creative bearing, but how important was that to your personal development, the journaling, in terms of helping you deal with that situation of feeling a bit isolated?
I was able to get my feelings out on paper, so it definitely relieved a lot of stress for me as a child. And to be honest, I was happy to withdraw into my own world and write. That was the place where I found happiness. You know, I'm also an only child, so it wasn't really difficult. That being able to withdraw was definitely something positive for me. It wasn't a negative thing.
And you say it allowed you to go into and create your own world, and that was the seed of your creative writing.
Yes, definitely.
How did you begin your creative writing? Was it poetry? Was it
poetry? Yes, poetry definitely, but it wasn't until college that I began to take it seriously. I started out college as an accounting major. You know, I really fed into what I heard all the time, that, you know, you can't be a writer, you're never going to make any money, you can't be successful, you can't do that. And I really fed into that. And my first year in college was, you know, I did horribly. And
now this was at Hampton?
This was at James Madison.
At James, oh, that's right.
Right. And I was used to doing very well in school. And so at the end of that school year, I finally got a meeting with the dean of the business department. And I explained to him, what was going on, that I was, taking the teacher's advice. I had a tutor, I was doing all these things, and I didn't feel like I was improving. And he said to me, well, we make the classes extra hard in the beginning to weed people like you out. And I said, oh, well, sir, you have been very successful. In that same year, though, my English professor asked me what was I planning to do with my life. And I told her this story, and I'm feeling so discouraged and hurt. And she said, well, you should consider this. You should consider careers being an English major. And she said, but take your time, spend some time in the English department, and just see if you like it.
Well, what was it that you said to her, though, that suggested English? You shared your journals and your writing?
She approached me. She was my English professor. She approached me.
She was accustomed to your writing?
Right, through the class. Okay. Right. So she approached me. And I definitely took her advice. And my sophomore year, the following year, they had this wonderful conference on campus called Furious Flowers. Furious Flowers.
Interesting.
And writers from everywhere came to this conference. Sonia Sanchez, Amiri Baraka, Nikki Giovanni, Gwendolyn Brooks was living at that time. She spoke at the conference. Mari Evans.
This is at JMU?
Yes. Oh my goodness. It changed my life.
How
well, I was able to, first of all, to listen to them speak, and many of them were performing artists as well.
Sure.
To watch them perform, and for them to talk about their journey and how much success they had had. I was feeding into the notion you can't be successful doing this.
Understood.
And now I'm meeting so many people
right.
That are successful doing it. And, they were so hands-on. Even though Sonia Sanchez was this big name and Nikki Giovanni, they were so one-on-one
right.
with all of us. It was just it really did change my life. And I said right then, I knew that this is, I'm going to be a writer. This is it. And so I always knew, it's always in my heart.
Right.
But this is when I made that decision and never turned back.
So did you find any common ground in their own experiences did they share their experiences when they were at your age, at that particular time, do you recall?
They were more encouraging.
Okay.
They didn't necessarily share.
Talk about their own experience.
Right. But they were more encouraging. They encouraged us to keep pushing, to tell our stories, and how the African American experience and those stories were so important, and to keep the torch going. And we were just so filled with encouragement. It was just an amazing experience.
Stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back. Welcome back to BioRhythms. Talking to Crystal Sessoms. Right now we're talking about writing. And so your college experience from the Furious Flowers conference, that was a singular moment in your life that inspired you to realize that you are a writer.
Yes, definitely.
What was that moment like? What was that epiphany like? What was that?
I was really overwhelmed. I really was. But it was also difficult because now I'm going against pretty much everything that I've been taught and I've been told. So even though I made that decision, it was still a struggle. And I would say that even sometimes now, not as much, but sometimes. You can hear that voice in the back. Yeah. I can still sometimes hear that voice, and I have to, quiet that voice down. I can tell them, I got this.
So what do you think that voice comes from? You still hear that voice? Not what's personal, I'm not asking that, but why do you think that voice persists? As successful as you have been, why do you think that voice persists?
Well, I think any time that you're doing something positive and you're on the right path, for your faith to go stronger, you have to be challenged. Right. And I think that voice is one of the ways that I'm being challenged so my faith can go stronger. Because this really is a spiritual journey for me.
I know. We've had extensive conversation about that. Yes. So tell me, when you were being challenged at the time that you were making this great discovery about yourself as a writer. Did that experience manifest itself in your writing?
It did. It
Okay.
did. I started out with poetry, and it was very strong.
Strong poetry.
Yes, it was very. It was
Make
very
you want to
strong.
slap somebody.
Right. It was a little bit angry.
Right.
So definitely.
Angry black woman.
Go figure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of love mixed in with that because I definitely grew up, with a lot of love. I'm an only child, but I had big families around me. My parents just only had one child, but their brothers and sisters had many. So I grew up with a lot of love. So there's a lot of love mixed in with the poetry as well. But the poetry is definitely a release. The writing for me is a release. It's the way for my soul to get out of my body.
Oh, I can fully appreciate that. With that said, let me ask you something. Is there one particular poem that stands out more than any other of all the poetry that you've written? Is there one that you feel is more self-descriptive or something that you found more fulfilling, rewarding?
Well, I would say, and this is funny, I do have a poem entitled "Don't Trip," because you like the taste of my dip. And it's really about, becoming a woman and becoming empowered.
Because we're just going to walk away from that metaphor.
Right. But it's really about that. You're talking about a woman who's, a young woman, also trying to find herself as a woman, and what all of that means, trying to find a place with beauty, trying to find strength, but knowing how to not have too much, or knowing when to have that strength and when not, knowing to relax, knowing when to trust God, all of that. Knowing to accept your beauty as a black woman in a society where, it's not necessarily accepted. So, the poem is really about that, and it became a signature piece because of that, empowering women.
Fantastic. So you went from writing poetry and eventually you started writing plays.
Much later, as an English major, you have to write everything. And so when I learned that I could fulfill, a whole bunch of my requirements in the theater department, I ran to the theater department. And it was another place that was like home. And that is when the theater bug really hit me. I grew up doing a little bit of everything, dancing, singing. I played the trumpet. I was in the band. I was drum major. I grew up doing a little bit of everything. But it wasn't until college that the theater bug really hit me.
And when if your experience was like mine, when you happened, for me it was a rediscovery of theater, but in theater it encompasses all of the art forms.
It does. Yeah. It does.
So that was a bit of a revelation for you that you could experiment with all of your creative urges and instincts in the world of theater?
Definitely. But at that time I was really honing in writing. Mm-hmm. After college, that's when I began to explore, and I really did a lot of acting for a long time. And every chance that I could get when I was acting, I was watching what was going on behind the scenes, just trying to continuously develop, myself as an artist overall. I had a mentor. He was the talent director of Beautiful People Model and Talent Agency.
Yeah, he was on the show recently.
Yeah, Zakinia Williams.
Also known as Jacoby.
Yes. I was his assistant.
He mentioned you.
Did he?
Yes.
Okay. I was his assistant for quite a few years throughout college. And, I was doing everything. I was modeling, I was dancing, I was singing, and I was feeling all over the place. And I was telling him, well, I feel like I should just try to do one thing because, I feel scatterbrained. He said, no, what you need to do is organize yourself. I see that you have talents in all of these areas. And if you keep growing in all of these areas, that can really take you to another level. And I listened. I really did. And I watched him. He put me in a lot of situations to meet people, to be behind the scenes and learn. Yes, definitely. And put me in front of the camera. I was the talent as well.
Nothing to Lose?
Yes. I did a film called Nothing to Lose.
And you played opposite? Who?
Brian Hooks was in that film, right. Cedric Pendleton, Michael Amell.
Right.
It was a very fun experience, written by Barry Bowles, and Brian Hooks was the star.
Brian Hooks.
Brian Hooks, the actor, comedian.
Right,
yes.
right, right. So you experimented and did a lot of acting before you found yourself getting back to the writing, and that was then in the form of playwriting.
Yes, and in the mix in there, I was a journalist. So I started out writing as a journalist first, professionally writing as a journalist.
Now, was that, I know you lived in Atlanta for a while. Was that in Atlanta or was that here?
No, that was here. I wrote for the Richmond Voice and the Williamsburg Gazette.
Okay.
And I think that was just such a wonderful experience as a writer because, you know, I'm in the field talking to people all the time and stories are just pouring into me. And I think it was a great foundation for what was to come.
So you were writing features?
Yes.
Feature stories?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And education and crime, entertainment, a little bit of everything. Okay.
And I want you to stay tuned because she's going to do that when we come back.
Hope Productions.
All right, elaborate.
Well, I wanted to be in control of putting all of those things under one umbrella. So that's why I started Cedar Hope Productions in 2011.
Cedar Hope Production is your own company?
Yes, it is my production company, where we encourage people to see hope and seed hope in everything they do.
And how do folks find out about Cedar Hope Productions? You have a website, no doubt?
I do, www.seedahope.com.
And that's S-E-E, go ahead.
SEEDAHOPE.com.
Okay. And Cedar Hope because you want folks to see the hope and to be a seed for the hope. And how have you done that? How has that come to fruition with your company? What kind of things have you done?
I really focus on productions that uplift people in communities and empower people. That is the first goal. And also, I have clients who have great stories and great ideas, but they don't know anything about taking that idea and making it a production. And so I help them do that as well.
So give us some idea of the kind of productions. And these, again, include some of your original pieces, right?
Yes. The first production through Cedar Hope Productions was Sisters Without Voices. And it's
very powerful piece.
Thank you, thank you. It's a story about women told through men. So the women don't speak in the production, only the men do, and the women speak through creative movement. And it really, you know, just talks about the stories of what women are going through. But the goal is to allow men and women to see each other in a different light so that they can make better decisions in their relationships.
That's an interesting concept, a play about women, but they're doing all the nonverbals and the men are speaking.
Right, definitely.
Where did that come from? How did you come to that approach?
I worked at Hampton University in student activities for quite some time. And I would do a large theatrical production, and there would be a small group of students that would work, we would work side by side to decide what that production would become every year. And one of the young ladies, Nandi Sharif, was one of those students. And when she graduated and I was no longer working at Hampton University, she came by my house one day and said, I've got this great idea, but I don't know, you know, what to do. And I love the concept. And we just began building from there. We sat down, we wrote the production together and produced it together. And
again, it was a great show, too.
It has turned out to very well. We started here, but we've actually traveled with the production as well.
And what else has Cedar Hope done?
I've worked with the City of Newport News producing plays that highlight the history of the Southeast community of Newport News. Okay. So the first production I did with them was, I wrote for them, was Truth and Freedom, which combined many people in history from the Southeast community and put them under a setting of protest where they're fighting for a Truth and Freedom Center to remain open, which represents truth and freedom in our lives.
Now, what kind of people were featured?
Pearl Bailey, Ella Fitzgerald.
And that's why I really wanted to point out that these ladies come from Newport News, Virginia.
Yes, yes, C. Waldo Scott. So it's a mixture of artists, politicians, activists.
Mm-hmm. And you also made a foray into feature-length film.
Yes, yes. My first film is entitled She's Gotta Get It.
Okay.
Definitely another story empowering women. The main character, in the very beginning, she loses her boyfriend, you know, and she starts some soul searching because she thinks it's because of her physical appearance. Mm-hmm. And she delves into a few things, you know, plastic surgery, finding out, you know, different information about to change herself. And in the end, you know, she finds out where true love really comes from.
Now, what was the greatest challenge writing, producing, and directing a feature-length film?
Well,
there were multiple challenges.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Well, first of all, I was smart. You know, I took off some hats. I said I can't do too much my first film, so I didn't direct the film. So that
Who
helped.
directed?
Sekou Fry directed the film.
Okay.
But I would say the biggest challenge was stepping away and relinquishing control, and knowing knowing when to do that.
Right. Right.
In theater, I direct my own plays. So, you know, I'm very much in control of what's going on, and then I step into film mode, and, you know, I'm realizing that I have to trust. And you learn this as an actor. I've learned it along the way, but it came to me again, you know, this lesson came to me again. So, but once I did that, the experience was just really amazing, and people in the production, because of the storyline, women in the production, expressed that they were empowered just being in the production. So when things like that happen, you know that you're on the right path. You know you fit the mark.
You made that transition from stage to film in terms of production, and you're still doing, of course, a fair amount of stage work. Yes. But what is the biggest difference between film and stage?
Stage is right there in front of your face every time, live, and the energy, I love it. The energy from the audience to the stage, it's amazing. And those lights, and, you know, when you're encompassing music with that, and how the music, the energy of the music can move a production and just inspire the actor, and all of that energy on stage just falls off the stage and into the audience. It's just a beautiful experience.
And film?
Film is more, you don't have to trust us more. You know, you can repeat things over and over again. So as a perfectionist, I enjoy film because we can do it as many times as needed to get it perfect. Mm-hmm. With theater, you know, you really have to let go. You have to let the actors on stage be who they need to be. You give them, as a director, you give them all the information. You give them everything that they need to do what they need to on stage. And once you do that, you have to let them go and let them fly.
You guys were staging showcases, and I know you're going to continue to do that, but what kind of folks have you featured in these showcases?
Oh, wow. Some amazing talent, from comedians to singers. We've had ventriloquists. The showcase is entitled All the Way Live, and we've moved it around quite a bit. We've done it at the Addicts Theater. We've also been at Downing Rose Cultural Arts Center with the show, and most recently at the American Theater in Hampton.
All right, guys, we want to thank you for joining us for this edition of BioRhythms. Again, please be sure to tell all of your friends about this exciting program that's happening right here in Hampton Roads, Virginia, spreading further and further across the country. This has been BioRhythms. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.